Good afternoon. The first item of business this afternoon is portfolio questions. The first portfolio is Constitution, External Affairs and Culture and Parliamentary Business. I'd advise the Chamber that there is a lot of interest in supplementary questions. There is next to no time available across the afternoon, so if I'm to get supplementaries in, they will need to be brief, as indeed will the responses. I call first question number 1, Pauline McNeill.
To ask the Scottish Government what assessment is made of Scotland participating in a UK-wide fan-led review of the live music industry in light of the recent UK-wide survey of the industry.
Cabinet Secretary Angus Robertson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The live music is a subject that many of us in the Chamber and right across the country feel very passionate about, as well as the value that it adds to our economy and Scotland's global cultural reputation. The Scottish Government will listen carefully to the findings of any fan-led review, as it will no doubt provide valuable insights to inform our continuing work with partners to help the sector flourish. While some review issues such as dynamic ticket pricing and VAT rates are reserved, our latest budget already addresses some of the financial challenges the sector faces, with 40% relief offered in 25-26 for hospitality premises with a rateable value up to and including £51,000, including grassroots music venues with a capacity up to 1,500 people, capped at £110,000 per business.
McNeill.
So this fan-led survey announced that fans want action on venue closures, ticketing, audience safety and further support for grassroots. So, not surprisingly, 93% of fans strongly agreed that a £1 ticket levy on arenas, stadiums and live music events should go to fund grassroots venues. Another issue raised in the survey is that 85% of fans believe that there should be a restriction on new residents filing noise complaints near venues already existing. It's an old issue. In fact, it does impact on my constituency, Glasgow Barrowlands and King Tut's. So I just wanted the Cabinet Secretary to set out what in that survey the Government can support, including the ticket levy, and anything else, because I do agree that Scottish people love their live music and it would be good for the Government to be seen to be active in delivering.
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, can I give the member the assurance that issues which have been part of public discourse for some while, such as the ticket levy, have been the subject of conversations that I've had directly with the Music Venue Trust and indeed with the wider sector. It's a matter that we keep under review, and as I've said to Patrick Harvey and others who've raised this question, and Mark Ruskell as well, incidentally, from the Scottish Green Party, who have regularly raised this issue, it is under active consideration. In terms of the other areas highlighted in the report, I'm happy to look more closely at that and reply to Pauline McNeill, because we have a shared interest in making sure that live music thrives, and if there's anything the Government can do more of, less of or differently to support the sector, I'm keen that we do that.
Briefly, Murdo Fraser.
Thank you. Music venues, particularly larger ones, are under unprecedented financial pressure at the present time. I know the Music Venue Trust is writing to the Cabinet Secretary around the rates issue. You may not have received that letter as yet, but if the Scottish Government is not prepared to reconsider its stance on business rates, what additional support can it give a sector that is being really squeezed in a difficult way at the present time?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, the first thing I would point out is that I will look very closely at a letter that would be sent on the subject. It is one that I take seriously. I think Murdo Fraser knows that I have been committed, so long I've been in office, to change the financial foundations, the way the culture sector is supported in Scotland. And this year we have been able to make a massive step change with the introduction of multi-annual year funding. That impacts directly on a lot of venues and indirectly on a lot of venues too. Now, no doubt there are other issues that should be considered. I'm content to do that. If he has proposals about how we may be able to do that, he's made a number of suggestions which would entail more government spending. I do note, without wanting to do too prickly on the subject, he did vote against the record rise in spending for culture in Scotland. Nevertheless, I'll give him another chance. If he has suggestions about financial interventions, where the money can be found, I'd be happy to look at that.
Question 2, Rachel Hamilton.
To ask the Scottish Government what its response is to the recent report by Scottish Borders Council on the future of Live Borders regarding any impact on cultural services, community engagement and libraries across the borders.
Cabinet Secretary.
We value culture in all of its forms, which is why we increased the culture budget by a record £34 million in 2025-26. Creative Scotland is engaged with the Council through the Scottish Borders Place Partnership, developing a Scottish Borders culture strategy. Creative Scotland supports Alchemy Film and Arts with a total of £881,250 in multi-year funding between 25 and 28, while in 24-25, Scottish Borders schools received £221,861 via the Youth Music Initiative. Of course, decisions around local culture policy lie with local authorities, and I urge Scottish Borders to continue working with local communities to ensure they receive the services that they deserve.
Rachel Hamilton.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for the answer. The report recommends the closure of key local facilities, including the Coldstream Museum, Eyemouth Community Centre, Jedburgh Swimming Pool, the Abbey Road Community Centre in Kelso, and Selkirk Leisure Centre, and other facilities that are so important to people. Cabinet Secretary, service usage patterns have changed. Running costs are high, but SNP have reduced their funding to local authorities. Labour's national insurance rises put a strain on SBC resources. Can I urge the Scottish Government to consider a longer-term strategy that will ensure equity in rural areas for people who rely on these vital services?
Cabinet Secretary.
To correct the record, spending for local authorities is going up under the SNP's budget, which was voted against by Rachel Hamilton. But looking specifically at facilities, if I could draw attention to libraries, I'm happy to, in correspondence, talk about other issues, but specific to libraries, we believe that everybody should have access to those services. And that's why we've asked the Scottish Library and Information Council to put together a short life advisory group to explore good quality public library services and making recommendations on the mechanisms for ensuring a standard level of service is delivered right across Scotland, striving for excellence and creating a benchmark for quality, and the group is expected to commence work soon, and I would urge her to feed into that process.
Question 3, Jeremy Balfour.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government how it is working with the music sector to enable up-and-coming artists to hold concerts in Scotland.
Cabinet Secretary.
The Scottish Government and our partners continue to work with the music sector, recognising it's an integral part of what makes Scotland the perfect stage. Music is also often offered as one of the strands of events and festivals, providing a platform for up-and-coming bands to perform together with the hospitality sector, and to continue to grow the market and increase demand for all genres. Visit Scotland regularly promotes events and festivals right across Scotland through its channels as part of the rich year-round programme that Scotland offers. Events and festivals hosting music can also apply for grants through Events Scotland's national and international grant programmes, as well as opportunities for learning and development through its Events Industry Development Programme of activities.
Jeremy Balfour.
Thank the Cabinet Secretary for his answer. A young DJ recently told BBC Scotland that he is concerned that the rising cost of going to gigs will stop people being energised by music, and that priority is being given to artists from more affluent backgrounds. Can the Cabinet Secretary outline what action the Scottish Government is taking to enable artists from all backgrounds to thrive, particularly as we approach the important festive seasons?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, can I say, one of the initiatives in this year's budget was to look at the establishment of a Scottish Exports Office for Culture, and I'm sure Jeremy Balfour would agree with me, one of the great opportunities for young up-and-coming artists right across the genres is that they have the ability not just to perform here, but to travel and perform internationally. So that's one specific area that I am very keen to support. Can I draw his attention to other initiatives that are promoted and are funded through Creative Scotland, which help showcase young and up-and-coming talent. I'm happy to forward some information to him on that. If there's anything that he believes that should be done in addition to that which is already taking place, I'd be very interested to hear his suggestions, because I agree with him. We want the young up-and-coming generations of talent in this country to thrive and succeed.
Brief supplementary, Eleanor Whittam.
Supporting emerging Scottish talent is key to a thriving music industry. Can the Cabinet Secretary say any more about how the Scottish Government is supporting grassroots music venues to ensure up-and-coming artists have a platform to perform in? I can remember fondly, way back in the 1990s, watching Biffy Clyro play in the teeny tiny toty wee K Park Tavern in Kilmarnock. So those platforms are essential to a thriving sector.
And briefly, Cabinet Secretary.
Well, the Scottish Government understands the pressures which many businesses continue to experience, and although substantial financial pressures persist, the budget this year means that over 90% of hospitality premises are liable for the basic property rate. Offering 40% relief to mainland hospitality premises liable for the basic property rate ensures that the vast majority of hospitality premises on the mainland will be able to benefit and continue to offer a platform for gigs.
Question 4, Tess White.
To ask the Scottish Government whether it will undertake a review of Historic Environment Scotland before the end of the current parliamentary session.
Cabinet Secretary.
There are currently no plans for the Scottish Government to undertake a review of Historic Environment Scotland. May I draw the members' attention to the recently published Historic Environment Scotland's corporate plan for 25 to 28. It's a public access document which highlights that by 28 HES will have increased direct expenditure on their assets by 15%, increased their contribution to Scotland's GDP by 10% from £1 billion to £1.1 billion, and will have invested at least £40 million in local communities across Scotland through HES grants schemes. I'm sure we can all agree these are ambitious outcomes and programmes of work, and I'm very supportive of the excellent work being undertaken by the organisation.
Tess White.
Cabinet Secretary, just a few weeks ago it emerged that Historic Environment Scotland was propagating that trans women are women. It had no policy regarding the provision of single-sex spaces and suggested that excluding people from bathrooms and changing rooms is transphobia. When a colleague of mine, Rachel Hamilton, demanded to the Cabinet Secretary intervene, the Cabinet Secretary said it was, and I quote, an operational matter for Historic Environment Scotland. Following the Supreme Court judgment and the swift action taken by the Parliament to comply with the ruling, will the Cabinet Secretary stop washing his hands of this situation and ensure that those organisations that fall under his remit immediately comply with their legal obligations to women?
Cabinet Secretary.
So I think Tess White understands, well I hope she does, that in Historic Environment Scotland and Creative Scotland and other arm's-length organisations, we are talking about arm's-length organisations. But I agree with her that we want to make sure that all organisations comply fully with the law and regulations which are required of them. I'm happy to write to her, no doubt, as in every time there are portfolio questions here in the cultural space, the cultural organisations are watching the exchanges that take place. And I'm sure Historic Environment Scotland will be seized of the matter that she raises, and we can continue our dialogue on this subject in future question sessions.
And very briefly, Emma Harper.
So my question, Presiding Officer, relates to the first question and not the anti-trans SUP that was the second one. Can the Cabinet Secretary say any more about how revising the framework document to permit more financial freedom will benefit Historic Environment Scotland?
Briefly, Cabinet Secretary.
These greater freedoms mean that for the first time, Historic Environment Scotland will be able to invest every penny from commercial income to protect our historic environment for future generations, mitigate the impacts of climate change, improve visitor experiences and deliver for Scotland. I hope that's something we will all welcome.
Question 5, Bill Kidd.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what assessment it has made of the impact of Brexit on Scotland's international relationships.
Cabinet Secretary.
The European Union's founding values of human dignity, freedom, democracy, equality, rule of law and respect for human rights are the values of Scotland. Despite voting to remain in the European Union, Scotland was taken out by a hard Brexit that has limited economic growth, restricted trade, increased food costs and diminished opportunities for young people. It's also damaged long-standing ties with European neighbours at a time when global insecurity makes international cooperation more important than ever. So let's be clear that the best future for Scotland must be rejoining the European Union as an independent country.
Bill Kidd.
Thank you very much. And just in the face of these global conflicts, as has been mentioned, in turbulent economic times, it's more vital than ever for both our prosperity and security that we have a strong relationship with our neighbours in Europe. The Cabinet Secretary must, and surely, and I think he does from what he said there, agree with me that the harms of Brexit will only grow when confronted with these global challenges such as trade, tariffs and energy security, and it is more important than ever to return to the European Union.
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, I agree with Bill Kidd. We do face unprecedented times, and events that bring into question the very survival of the values that have underpinned the international order throughout our lifetimes and provided us with the stability and the peace that we've been able to enjoy. As the spectre of war has returned to this continent, it's more important than ever that we consolidate our long-standing relations with our neighbours in the rest of Europe. And like the majority of members of this Parliament, I believe that the best way for Scotland to take its place in the international community is as an independent member state of the European Union.
Question 6, Patrick Harvey.
To ask the Scottish Government what it anticipates the impact will be on the Scottish film and TV industry of the US President's intention to impose tariffs.
Cabinet Secretary.
The Scottish Government is committed to building on the exceptional growth of Scotland's screen sector in recent years, so the prospect of any tariffs is greatly concerning. However, the scope of potential tariffs or non-tariff measures on foreign movies has not been confirmed by the United States administration. An outline US-UK trade deal has now been reached, and I look forward to exploring the details of the final agreement once shared by the UK Government to fully understand the potential impact on Scottish film and TV industry.
Patrick Harvey.
The Cabinet Secretary is right that this hasn't been confirmed, but that's why we should be seeking to influence the position of the UK Government in its negotiating position right now. Has the Cabinet Secretary spoken to, or does he intend to, his UK Government counterparts to make sure that they prioritise the film and TV industry, which has been a success story in Scotland, and make it clear that in a country which already imports a great deal of cultural content from an increasingly toxic US culture, tariffs, as threatened unilaterally by the US President, will be entirely unacceptable?
Secretary.
So the concerns of the Scottish Government have been communicated directly to the UK Government on this question in relation to trade discussions. In terms of what the Scottish Government is doing to support the film and TV sector, our budget for 25-26 includes a £2 million increase for Screen Scotland to support work to attract international investment in large-scale productions in Scotland. And recently we were able to confirm the excellent news that the Los Angeles-based animation and visualisation company Halon Entertainment is to invest £28 million in a new Glasgow studio, creating up to 250 jobs over the next 3 years.
Brief supplementary, Neil Bibby.
Well, the new US administration appears to have rolled back slightly on its threats of film industry tariffs. This situation shows the importance of supporting a homegrown film and television sector and young creative talent. The Cabinet Secretary will be aware of last week the Scottish Institute of Theatre, Dance, Film and Television collapsed into administration. In light of this situation and the impact of any US tariffs, can the Cabinet Secretary set out how the Scottish Government can help ensure young Scots have opportunities and a pathway into working in the arts, whether that be in Scotland, the US or other global markets?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, I think Neil Bibby is absolutely right. The role of skills and training is vital as we see the screen sector pass the £1 billion mark, which we hope it will do by 2030 in terms of gross value added to our economy. There are a number of initiatives that the Scottish Government is directly responsible for. So at the present time, we're trying to introduce screen studies to Scottish primary and secondary schools. I think that will be a tremendous achievement. It's something that other countries don't do. He raised a very specific concerning case involving a private training centre. I'm aware of the case that he raises, and I know that ministers are seized of the matter. I think our priority must be in supporting the students that have studied there and have wished to conclude their studies, and I undertake to get my colleague Jenny Goruth to write to him to let him know about what the Scottish Government is doing in this specific case. But in the generality, training and skills are absolutely key for the growth of the screen sector in Scotland, and we're fully supportive of that.
Question 7, Michael Mara.
To ask the Scottish Government what recent discussions the Constitution Secretary has had with ministerial colleagues regarding its constitutional strategy, including in relation to its reported call for full fiscal autonomy.
Cabinet Secretary.
I regularly hold discussions with ministerial colleagues about matters concerning my portfolio. Independence would give control over all public spending decisions while providing the range of fiscal powers necessary to unlock Scotland's full economic potential. Until the people of Scotland can choose a different constitutional arrangement, moving to full fiscal autonomy would create a fairer system, protecting public services and allowing investment in our economy. And the Scottish Government stands ready to engage at any point with the UK Government on substantial new fiscal powers for Scotland, following which we will will model the impact of potential policy choices.
Michael Mara.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for his answer. But on 16th of January, the Finance Secretary, Shona Robinson, informed the Scottish Affairs Committee that the preferred policy of the Scottish Government was indeed full fiscal autonomy. And just in very similar words to the Cabinet Secretary, she said moving to full fiscal autonomy for the Scottish Government would create a fairer system that would protect public services and allow investment in our economy. But this SNP Government's own statistics show that full fiscal autonomy would immediately wipe £12.8 billion out of Scotland's public finances. So can the Cabinet Secretary explain how a cut of £12.8 billion would protect public services?
Cabinet Secretary.
So firstly, can I point out to Mr Mara, because I think you should know that he's usually well informed on these matters. Scotland having fiscal control over its own policy is not a new priority of the Scottish Government. It has been for a long time. Of course, we would like to be able to operate as an independent member state, like all of our neighbours, all of which are more economically successful than the United Kingdom. I don't recognise the statistic that Mr Mara has presented to us. If he would like to write to me on the subject, he can feel free to. I mean, there's a big difference, obviously, between our parties. On these benches, we believe that the best decisions made about Scotland are best made in this place by parliamentarians in the Scottish Parliament, rather than subcontracting it to his colleagues in London, who seem to be making one bad mistake after another.
I think two brief supplementaries, but they'll need to be brief on the responses. First, Jackie Dunbar.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. As it stands, the Labour Government has chosen to save British Steel, but not Grangemouth, fund carbon capture in England, but not in Aberdeen, support AI in Cambridge but not in Edinburgh, and impose austerity measures across the UK when the SNP Government has spent £1.2 billion mitigating so that Scotland is the only place in the UK where child poverty is going down, not up. Does the Cabinet Secretary agree that fiscal autonomy will allow the Scottish Government to fundamentally rebalance the economy to deliver for the people in Scotland?
Cabinet Secretary.
Yes.
In answering briefly, Presiding Officer, it's clear that Scotland's interests are not best served as part of the United Kingdom. Our best hope for the future lies in becoming an independent country, in a partnership of equals with our friends across the United Kingdom. That will allow us to make a real difference for our people and our future prosperity. Until such a time as the people of Scotland can choose a different constitutional arrangement, moving to full fiscal autonomy would create a fairer system that would protect public services and allow investment in our economy.
And very briefly, Willie Rennie.
I'm not sure why the SNP continues to return to the scene of the crime to check that the body is really dead. But David Phillips from the Institute of Fiscal Studies warns that full fiscal autonomy would result in difficult fiscal trade-offs. So why would the SNP ministers even contemplate this when they're already complaining they don't have enough money?
Cabinet Secretary.
It's not a very difficult concept to grasp, although I know Willie Rennie has had great difficulty over the years accepting this or understanding it. On these benches, we believe that the best decisions about Scotland's economic and social progress should be made here. He doesn't. He thinks that the decisions should be made by people that we don't elect in the UK Parliament. So I will keep on trying to persuade Mr Rennie of the advantages of being a normal country. It's for him to spell out how federalism would work in a multinational context where 85% of the population live in one part of it. There isn't a single example of that working anywhere in the world. I'd be happy to hear from him explain how his plans would work.
Question 8, Evelyn Tweed.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government whether it will provide further details on how its planned Museums Capacity and Support programme will support local and regional museums and galleries.
Cabinet Secretary.
The £4 million Scottish Government investment in a new Museums Capacity and Support programme will help to embed the collaboration, innovation and organisational sustainability needed to enable positive strategic change across the sector so that these vital organisations can continue to enrich our local communities now and for generations to come. Plans are currently being worked up with partners and further details will be shared in due course.
Evelyn Tweed.
The Smith and Stirling recently opened their exhibition of the Mary Queen of Scots casket and have ambitious plans for future exhibits. Does the Cabinet Secretary join me in congratulating the team at the Smith on securing this loan, and can he outline the Scottish Government, how the Scottish Government are supporting small museums to realise their innovative plans?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, can I briefly take the opportunity to congratulate everybody involved in the museum in Stirling with the exhibition, and this is exactly the kind of initiative that the Scottish Government's investment in a new museum's capacity and support programme would help, with the collaboration between local museums, national museums and with the organisation that is required for such exhibitions in future. I think it's a really good test case, and I commend everybody involved in it, and indeed Evelyn Tweed, who has been a doughty supporter of it.
A very brief supplementary, Alexander Stewart.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Increasing visitor numbers at local galleries and museums depends on having innovative collections and material for people to view. Can I ask the Cabinet Secretary to outline what action the Scottish Government is taking to ensure that collections held in Edinburgh and Glasgow are shared with local galleries and museums to increase footfall?
Briefly as possible, Cabinet Secretary.
Well, the member raises an interesting point, and there are significant figures in the artistic community. I think of Dr Benda Grosvenor as one of them, who has been outspoken in support of wider lending from collections both in Scotland's national museums but also in museums and galleries in London. I'm very keen to support the maximum amount of lending that can be supported by local galleries and museums, and it's something that I'd be happy to discuss with the member, because I think there's definitely room to grow, because I know that people in the arts sector are also of that view.
Thank you. That concludes portfolio questions. Point of order, Rachel Hamilton.
Presiding Officer, I seek your advice. Emma Harper stated that my colleague Tess White's question to the Cabinet Secretary was anti-trans. That was not the case. The question legitimately asked the Cabinet Secretary about his obligations that fall under his remit for organisations such as Historic Environment Scotland to be compliant with workplace regulations, the law and the public sector equality duty. We must all strive to be respectful in this place. Can the Presiding Officer share with the Chamber if there is a mechanism for Emma Harper to apologise and correct the record?
I would suggest to Rachel Hamilton that is not a point of order. I was in the chair, I heard the remarks made, I did not deem that any intervention was required, but I would again stress that courtesy and respect within this chamber is required by all members. That concludes portfolio questions on Constitution, External Affairs, Culture and Parliamentary Business. There will be a brief pause before we move on to the next portfolio to allow front benches to change. Okay, the next portfolio is Justice and Home Affairs. A reminder to colleagues that there is next to no additional time across the afternoon. There's a lot of interest in supplementaries, therefore I'm going to require brevity in both questions and responses. And I call question number one, Bob Doris.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government how the justice system aims to support women who experience financial and economic abuse from a partner.
Mr Siobhan Brown.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The Domestic Abuse Scotland Act 2018 created the offence of domestic abuse that incorporates coercive and controlling behaviour, including financial abuse. Anyone experiencing domestic abuse is encouraged to seek help. Equally Safe, Scotland's strategy to prevent and eradicate violence against women and girls explicitly recognises economic abuse. Our £26.1 million a year Delivering Equally Safe Fund supports survivors, including through Greater Easterhouse Money Advice Project, which delivers specialist financial advice and support for survivors in Glasgow. The Victim-Centred Approach Fund provides over £32 million to 23 organisations between 2025 to 2027, including £12 million for advocacy support for survivors of gender-based violence.
Bob Doris.
I thank the Minister for that answer. The Social Justice Committee has heard of issues for women facing financial abuse with regards accessing legal aid, with the Scottish Legal Aid Board admitting apparent flexibility could exist, but women rarely apply for it. We also heard that the Domestic Abuse Protection Orders and notices, I think from the 2021 Act, have still to be implemented, something that would also remove costs to women and make them safer. How are the Scottish Government seeking to resolve these matters?
Minister.
Thank you. Can I assure the member we are determined to support women to get the right access they need? We have provided a pilot project in Edinburgh that provides an early intervention service offering legal advice to women and children impacted specifically by domestic abuse. And in addition to the current Judicare system, we've provided an annual grant of funding of £230,000 for the last 8 years to the Scottish Women's Rights Centre. I'm also aware the Cabinet Secretary for Justice and Home Affairs has previously outlined some of the challenges around the implementation of Part 1 of the Domestic Abuse Protection Scotland Act 2021, and these are fully understood by our justice partners and external stakeholders, and we will look to outline the next steps in coming months.
Question 2, Sue Webber.
Thanks, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what its response is to reports that shoplifting crimes have increased by 89% since 2020.
Minister.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I am, of course, very concerned by the rise in shoplifting crimes and recognise the significant harm to retail businesses from theft, as well as threatening and antisocial behaviour, which is totally unacceptable. The Scottish Government is committed to supporting police's robust approach in addressing this issue, which is why we have made £3 million available this year specifically to support Police Scotland's work alongside retailers to tackle retail crime. This forms part of a record investment of £1.6 billion for policing this year, which is an increase of £90 million from last year's budget.
Sue Webber.
Thank you, Minister. I met with the Scottish Retail Consortium earlier this week, who've warned that retail crime is spiralling out of control, costing retailers over £2.2 billion a year in stolen goods, with many incidents going unreported due to lack of faith that shoplifters will face any punishment or consequences. They told me that last year retailers...
Through the chair, please.
The Scottish Retail Consortium told me that last year retailers across the UK spent £1.8 billion on crime prevention measures in stores, with the Scottish equivalent being around £145 million. £3 million, Minister. With shoplifting up 89% since 2020 and up 18% just in the past year, does the Minister really believe that the Government is really doing enough to stop retail crime?
Minister.
The Scottish Government recognises the distress caused by crime on its victims and fully supports the activity to reduce this harm. Police Scotland have published an action plan which aims to provide visible and measurable impact on retail crime, and this includes stopping people from becoming perpetrators of acquisitive crime, bringing perpetrators to justice with a focus on repeat offenders and organised criminals, and strengthening collective protection against retail crime.
Question 3, Murdo Fraser.
Thank you. To ask the Scottish Government what recent discussions it has had with Police Scotland in relation to its policy on the recording of non-crime hate incidents.
Minister.
Thank you. The handling and recording of non-crime hate incidents is an operational matter for Police Scotland. Revised guidance on the handling of non-crime hate incidents was published by Police Scotland in August last year. We have regular discussions at official and at ministerial level with Police Scotland on tackling hatred and prejudice in line with our engagement with Police Scotland across government on a range of issues.
Murdo Fraser.
I thank the Minister for her response, but should Police Scotland be operating an unlawful policy, that surely is a matter that should be of concern to the Scottish Government. For more than a year, I've been in correspondence with Police Scotland on non-crime hate incidents. After my initial complaints to them were rejected, the Police Investigations and Review Commissioner ruled that the police had responded inadequately to my 3 grounds of complaint. They have been given until next Tuesday to give me a satisfactory response. If Police Scotland continue to be unable to defend the lawfulness of their policy, at what point will the Scottish Government intervene?
Minister.
Thank you. I am confident that Police Scotland take recommendations from PERC seriously, and as Mr Fraser knows, ministers have no role in the investigation of complaint handling reviews against Police Scotland. It's not appropriate for me to comment on cases that are subject to an independent process. We also do not comment on operational matters relating to Police Scotland, and to ensure that Scotland's criminal justice system remains free from political interference. I understand that PERC have made recommendations about Mr Fraser's case, and I'm sure Police Scotland are currently considering and will respond in due course.
Question 4, Craig Hoy.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what discussions the Justice Secretary has had with the Lord Advocate regarding the costs of defending unsuccessful legal cases in the Supreme Court.
Cabinet Secretary Angela Constance.
Presiding Officer, I meet regularly with the Lord Advocate on a range of issues, including in relation to cases that are being considered by the UK Supreme Court. The focus of my discussions with the Lord Advocate is not on the costs involved.
Craig Hoy.
The Justice Secretary cannot or will not put a final number on how much taxpayers' money has been wasted on these Supreme Court defeats. But can I give her some numbers? 3-0 against this government and its law officers in the highest court of the land. Why the SNP government decided to waste taxpayers' money on cases that common sense and the Scottish public knew would fail is beyond comprehension. But will the Cabinet Secretary now urgently commit to coming clean about how much this hat-trick of humiliation has cost Scottish taxpayers and explain to this Parliament who is going to carry the can for these decisions?
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, the Scottish Government, like all governments, is necessarily involved in litigation, given the range and importance of its responsibilities. Sometimes we are defenders and sometimes we are pursuers of cases. And the outlays incurred in litigation are, like any other costs of government, subject to rules about public finance decision-making and accountability. And legal work is, of course, an integral part of the commitment to maintaining the rule of law at the heart of government.
Question 5, Eleanor Whittam.
To ask the Scottish Government whether it will provide an update on what further action it can take in the current parliamentary session to tackle abuse against women and girls.
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, tackling violence against women and girls remains a key priority for this Government. Our programme for government maintains progress on the Equally Safe Delivery Plan. We are developing an approach to honour-based and extended family abuse. We are supporting schools to equip young people with the skills to counter the impacts of online hate, including misogyny. And we are piloting specialist independent legal advice for complainants in rape and attempted rape cases. Subject to parliamentary approval, we are introducing domestic homicide and suicide reviews, abolishing the not proven verdict, establishing a sexual offences court and a victims and witness commissioner.
Eleanor Whittam.
With the advice from the First Minister that, with his regret, the legislation to protect women and girls from misogynistic abuse will not be taken forward in this session, the Cabinet Secretary will know that this advice has been devastating to me personally as a former women's aid worker, for women's organisations across Scotland and for my constituents in Carrickmillock and Doon Valley. Does the Cabinet Secretary appreciate the depth of disappointment in this regard, and what reassurances can be provided to women and girls at this time, given we are seeing an exponential rise in misogynistic harms?
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, I do of course appreciate and recognise the depth of feeling. As many members will recognise, misogyny is a complex area of policy and law. Our criminal law needs to be clear and unambiguous. And of course, time in this parliamentary session remains short. We will, of course, consider how we take forward further work, recognising the gendered nature of misogynistic harm over and above our commitments in the programme for government. But as I have already committed to, I will take further action, and that women and girls need protection, which is why in September I will bring forward new legal protections for women and girls through adding the protected characteristic of sex to the Hate Crime and Public Order Scotland Act 2021, so that women and girls have the same protections as other groups protected under this Act. And I hope, Presiding Officer, this will be welcomed.
Thank you. I've got a number of supplementaries. I'll try to get them all in. Ideally, they would be brief. First, Pam Gossel.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Every 10 minutes, an incident of domestic abuse is reported to Police Scotland. And this is just the tip of the iceberg, with so many cases going unreported. My Prevention of Domestic Abuse Scotland Bill was published last week and includes several measures to reduce of domestic abuse. Therefore, does the Cabinet Secretary agree that, if passed, this bill will significantly turn the tide, as domestic abuse has ruined lives, destroyed families and wrecked communities?
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, I've always been clear that we're always willing to explore any options to reduce crime and reoffending, and in particular domestic violence. I'm happy to discuss with the member again in relation to her proposed legislation. I'm keen to see how it is envisaged that it will interact with existing measures such as the Disclosure Scheme for Domestic Abuse Scotland, which gives people the right to ask about the background of their partner, and Police Scotland gives them the power to tell people that they may be at risk, even where this information has not been sought, but always happy to engage with members.
And Polly McNeill.
Deepfake abuse has been described as a new frontier of violence against women, and the UK Government plans to make creating sexually explicit deepfake a criminal offence. The Cabinet Secretary will be aware that it is the creation of the images which is the issue. The First Minister did say to me back in January that the Government were considering whether there was a gap in the law, including that they would discuss it whether or not they could do joint effort with the UK Government. I wonder if the Cabinet Secretary could update me on whether there's been any further thinking around making this a criminal offence.
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, Ms McNeill raises a pertinent point, and the updated Equally Safe strategy certainly recognises that just as violence against women and girls takes place in all communities and places, the same also applies to online places. While there has been much engagement with the UK Government, in particular around the crime and policing bill, I will engage further with MOAN officials and provide Ms McNeill with a more detailed update.
Anna Regan.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. If we're serious about tackling the root cause of male violence against women, then we must challenge the demand that fuels it. Does the Government agree that support in this Parliament for my unbuyable bill, which seeks to criminalise the purchase of sex and provide support for those exploited in prostitution, is a vital first step in changing societal attitudes by sending that clear message that women and girls are not commodities? Will the Government back this approach?
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, I'm aware that Ms Brown has been engaging very closely with Ms Regan on this matter, and I know that Ms Regan will be aware of the work that the Government is currently undertaking to reduce the demand for criminal sexual exploitation, and I am very clear that criminal sexual exploitation is a form of violence against women and girls that should not be tolerated, and the Government, like Parliament, will continue to scrutinise the detail of Ms Regan's bill.
And question 6, Emma Roddick.
To ask the Scottish Government what its response is to recent reported figures indicating higher than average drug driving offences in the Highlands and Islands.
For calling the Cabinet Secretary, I would appreciate... Yes, we need the camera on. Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, I recognise that there has been a rise in the number of people prosecuted and convicted for drug driving offences in recent years, both in the Highlands and Islands and at a national level. This increase follows the introduction of a new drug driving law in 2019 and a focused enforcement approach by Police Scotland in tackling the scourge of drug driving.
Emma Roddick.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that. As well as higher statistics on drug driving, there are active efforts going on to go above and beyond the current guidance to spot this, and there are pilots ongoing for road testing. So does the Cabinet Secretary think that the higher figures are a result of such efforts, and therefore that they should be replicated in other areas? And what more can be done to raise awareness of the harm of drug driving and ways that the police and the justice system as a whole can deter it?
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, I think the short answer is that the reason for this increase is, of course, about very effective enforcement by Police Scotland and also the successful campaigns that they have had, in particular around the festive period. I know that Police Scotland have spoken to around 25,000 drivers to further promote the aim of, for example, the festive campaign and to inform people about how they can easily identify drink and drug drivers. But this is a good example of the appropriate legislation being in place, follow-up by enforcement action as well as awareness raising.
Question 7, Martin Whitfield.
Very grateful, Deputy Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government how it plans to address the reported lack of access to legal aid in rural regions.
Minister.
Legal aid funding allows solicitors to deliver their services to people across Scotland, and these services can be delivered remotely as well in person. Every year, legal aid helps many people with civil problems, and legal aid expenditure is on track to be over £170 million this year, which is the highest ever level. However, I recognise that improvement is needed and that there are challenges in certain areas with certain types of legal aid work. Our programme for government commits us to take forward reforms set out in the recently published Legal Aid Reform Discussion paper, which will simplify the system for solicitors and those who need legal assistance, along with longer-term proposals for funding and improving the delivery of services. And this includes a review of legal aid fees that will help develop regular assessments to ensure that systems remain fair and sustainable and delivers for the public purse.
Martin Whitfield.
I'm very grateful for that response, and indeed the Cabinet Secretary to Craig Hoy's question noted how important legal advice was to the Scottish Government. The Law Society of Scotland has warned the legal aid system is functionally collapsing in rural Scotland. Entire communities, particularly in the south of Scotland, face systematic exclusion from access to legal aid. Indeed, in the Borders, there are only 3 firms remain able to offer legal aid, and they are at or beyond capacity. Article 6(3)(c) of the European Convention of Human Rights enshrines the right to legal assistance where the interests of justice require it. So can I ask the Minister, when did the Scottish Government last consider it could be subject to a human rights claim for the lack of access because of the collapsing system of legal aid? And what level of risk was that assessment placed at?
Minister.
Thank you for Mr Whitford for his question. I engage regularly with the legal profession, and it's not something that has been raised specifically with me in my meetings. I do know that SLAB can and often do provide funding for solicitors to allow services to be delivered to people all around the country. I know also that there are some gaps at the moment within our rural communities, which SLAB are looking at the geographical issues. And this is one of the things that we're looking in the review paper on how we can improve things.
Briefly, Liam Kerr.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The Minister cannot say she wasn't warned. In a one-on-one meeting last year, the Law Society, of which I remind people I'm a member, warned the Victims Minister about the developing crisis in legal aid. Now, last month, they warned that the government's plans that we've just heard about fail to recognise the urgency of the situation and do not deliver on either the scale or the timeline needed. So, given that, what are her projected outcomes from her plans, and when will they be actioned?
Minister.
Thank you. One of the things, as I have said previously, that we are unable to do legal aid reform in this parliamentary term. So I am committed to be making improvements on what we can do in this parliamentary term. One of the things that I can maybe say about the paper and what improvements that we will be doing is the paper sets out 3 key strands of work which we'll undertake to improve legal aid and reform in Scotland. In the immediate short term, we will simplify the Judicare model by bringing forward regulations to Parliament this year. It's our intention to make changes to criminal, civil and children's legal aid. We will make summary legal aid available for guilty pleas and cases continued without pleas in summary prosecution cases. There is a lot of work within the discussion paper, but that's what we will be aiming to do in this parliamentary term.
And question 8, Edward Mountain.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what its position is on how Police Scotland shares information with other statutory bodies about vulnerable individuals.
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, it's my understanding that Police Scotland shares information with other statutory bodies in a manner that is lawful, necessary and proportionate, fully in line with data protection legislation, human rights obligations and safeguarding duties. This can include circumstances where there is a clear risk to life, safety or well-being. Protecting vulnerable individuals is a core priority for Police Scotland. Their 3-year plan makes clear that ensuring people in crisis or distress receive the right support at the right time from the right service, and that's central to how they operate, and this Government fully supports that ambition.
Edward Mountain.
And I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that answer, and I'd like to thank her and the Deputy First Minister Presiding Officer for meeting myself and the families of the individuals killed and injured in Inverness in 2020. Subsequent to that meeting, I've identified that the police had no forms of concern relating to the accused who had been previously arrested. The families and I have looked at the mental health and policing framework for collaboration and see little that would compel the police to liaise more closely with partners such as NHS boards and councils. What guarantee can the Cabinet Secretary give to assure families that Police Scotland will learn from this incident to ensure more joined-up action in the future?
Cabinet Secretary.
Signing officer, I'm very grateful to Mr Mountain for facilitating a very humbling but also a very informative meeting between himself and his constituents, who are the family members of victims of a very serious crime indeed. We've engaged substantially with Mr Mountain and his constituents over the framework for collaboration. I would be happy to receive more detail on the specifics he received around no forums in relation to Police Scotland. I am cognisant that Police Scotland, like all partners, are often reliant indeed on other partners in sharing information, and that's why the framework for collaboration is so important, that people are in the same multi-agency space in relation to sharing information. But I'm more than happy to engage further with Mr Mountain.
Brief supplementary, Audrey Nicholl.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The safety of vulnerable individuals must be at the forefront of all actions in our justice system. So can the Cabinet Secretary provide some further detail on how Police Scotland ensures that personal information remains secure when sharing with third parties?
Cabinet Secretary.
It's obviously an operational matter, but I am aware that where a decision is taken to share a vulnerable person concern report, which is an established procedure with Police Scotland, where they share that with an external partner, Police Scotland uses a secure email encryption system to transmit the information in a password-protected format, and this approach ensures, as you'd expect, that sensitive data is transferred securely.
Thank you, Cabinet Secretary. I'm pleased we got through that without your voice giving out completely, but that concludes portfolio questions. There'll be a brief pause before we move to the next item of business to allow front benches to change.